Welcome to Burnout-Free Me, your success and well-being podcast. I'm Dr. Amy Grimm, and I am so glad you're here. Let's go from burnout to breakthrough together. Hey everyone, welcome back to Burnout-Free Me, the place where high-achieving women learn to stop running on fumes and start living life on their own terms. This is episode number 128. Now, if you've ever found yourself lying awake at night, replaying a tough conversation, or feeling like your emotions are just running the show, this episode is for you. Because today, we're talking about emotional processing, what it really means, why it's essential for your well-being, and how understanding your nervous system can completely change the way you experience your emotions. Because the thing is that burnout isn't just about overworking. It's also about emotional overload, that buildup of unprocessed feelings that your mind and body never get a chance to move through. And that can keep you in a dysregulated state and totally zap your energy. So let's start with addressing a myth. This is something that your brain loves to do. It lies to you about how long your feelings last. Just think about the last time you felt dread before walking into a tough meeting. In that moment, it probably felt like it would never end. Or maybe you had an amazing weekend and felt on top of the world, and you wished that you could stay in that space forever. Your brain exaggerates both. It overestimates how long your emotions will last, the good and the bad. When you're in a difficult feeling, like anxiety or guilt, your brain zooms in so tightly that it starts to feel permanent. That's part of your nervous system's protective design. It narrows your focus to keep you safe. And that's why you can start to feel stuck and think things like, this is just the way it is, and that nothing you do matters, and that you're just going to feel like this forever. But here's the thing. Emotions are more like weather systems. They roll in, they shift, they pass. And when you remind yourself, this feeling is temporary, you're actually sending a calming message to your brain and your nervous system that it's safe to feel what you're feeling. And that little reminder helps your body move out of that fight or flight and back into regulation, which means your energy and clarity return much faster. Now, one of my favorite tools for understanding this comes from the neuroanatomist Jill Bolt Taylor, and she describes what she calls the 90-second rule. Now, here's how it works. When something triggers a strong emotion, maybe it's a client complaint, a tense conversation with your boss, or maybe your partner forgetting something important. Your brain initiates a chemical response. Stress hormones like noradrenaline surge through your bloodstream, and then they're gone. That entire physiological wave only lasts about 90 seconds. After that, Any emotion you're still feeling is not because you're stuck. It's because your thoughts are replaying the story and re-triggering that loop over and over again. This is really powerful to know. It means that when you feel that flood of anger, shame, dread, or even joy, you can let the initial wave happen without judgment. Just notice what's happening in your body. Feel the sensations. Breathe. Feel it fully. After those 90 seconds, you then have a choice. Do I want to keep replaying this story? Or can I choose a new thought, a new action, a new focus? Imagine this. You get a sharp email from a client right before you're leaving work. You feel your chest tighten, your heart rate spike, your jaw clench. You step outside, walk to your car, and instead of replaying that email the entire drive home, you pause. You take that 90 seconds to breathe and feel. When that wave passes, your prefrontal cortex, your rational brain, comes back online. And you can decide, do I want to address this tomorrow with a clear head, or do I want to stew on this all night? That's nervous system regulation in action. You get to choose. And most of us are taught that difficult feelings are bad and should be avoided, while pleasant feelings are good and should be held onto for dear life. But emotions, they're just messengers. When you get curious about them, you realize they're giving you important information. Take, for example, the feeling of dread you may have experienced from that client email. This can just be an indicator that you care deeply and you want to do a good job. It doesn't mean you have to avoid it or suppress it. It just means you can acknowledge it and let that 90-second wave pass and move on with your evening. Some other examples of emotions we try to avoid include things like boredom. So if you're always on the go, boredom might feel threatening. But boredom could be nudging you towards rest, creativity, or something more aligned. Or even frustration. Maybe you keep snapping at your team. Underneath frustration, it might be pointing you to something like unmet expectations, unclear communication, or even an injustice that needs to be addressed. So, when you're someone who's running a busy team, managing staff, keeping clients happy, it is the pause to get curious about the frustration instead of pushing through, in which you'll actually find clarity. Pause. Oh, I'm not actually mad at that person. I'm just overwhelmed and need help. That kind of shift changes everything. And the interesting thing here is that in order to do this, you have to be able to recognize what you're feeling. And many of us were never taught the language of feelings. When somebody asks you, "How are you?" our responses are usually vague, like, "I'm fine, good, stressed." For those of us with a less robust emotional vocabulary, we can default to using a familiar set of language to describe a whole range of emotions. This is called emotional clumping, using one vague word for a whole range of emotions. For example, angry could actually be irritated, resentful, betrayed, frustrated, furious. Each has its own specific color, shade, tone. And when you learn to distinguish those shades, it's like switching from a black and white TV to HD color. Suddenly you can see and appreciate so much more. You can manage emotions more effectively and communicate what you need. So if you find yourself saying, I'm angry, pause and dig deeper. What is this anger trying to tell me? And maybe you'll realize you're actually disappointed in yourself for missing a deadline or missing a diagnosis. That is the kind of insight that can lead to self-compassion instead of lashing out. So think of it like this. Your emotions are like your internal GPS. If you don't have the right map, it's easy to feel lost, confused, overwhelmed, and unsure where to go. Once you've learned to identify and name what you're feeling with more precision, you can then orient yourself and figure out what to do. This is called affect labeling, simply naming your emotion. Research shows that when you accurately name what you're feeling, it activates the language centers of your brain and calms your amygdala, the part that sets off the alarm bells. So instead of saying, I'm stressed, you might say, I'm feeling disappointed that my idea wasn't recognized. Or I'm feeling anxious about the client feedback. Or maybe I'm feeling pressured for time. That clarity alone helps you regulate your response. And a good place to start, especially if you're unfamiliar with this type of skill set, is to try checking in with yourself just once a day to start. What am I really feeling right now, in this moment? The more specific your emotional vocabulary becomes, the better equipped you are to work with your emotions rather than suppress them or deny them. This alone will free up so much mental space, which will leave you feeling more energized instead of stressed and drained. Now, another helpful piece of information when it comes to understanding your emotional response is to recognize that every emotion has a root theme. For example, disappointment often traces back to unmet expectations. Anger often traces to injustice. Happiness to reaching a goal. Contentment to a sense of enoughness. And when you take a moment to look beneath the surface, you understand not just what you're feeling, but why you're feeling this. This is empowering. This is where emotional processing deepens. This is how you can express your needs more clearly, set boundaries, and celebrate meaningfully instead of reacting on autopilot or going through your day like you're just going through the motions. Feeling empowered and in control of yourself is an important component to preventing burnout and recovering from burnout. But oftentimes, we dismiss emotion work because we don't think it's important. We are taught to rationally think things through with our mind. But for a body stuck in stress mode, it's absolutely imperative that you learn to recognize your feelings and process them first. Otherwise, you won't gain full access to your executive function skills, and you'll continue to feel stressed and overwhelmed and stuck, no matter how much you try to outthink the problem. So you have to understand your emotional world if you want to live a burnout-free life. Because your emotions, they don't just live inside you, they change how you see the world and they change how you experience life. Think of it like this. Imagine you're going to meet a friend, and right before you leave the house, you get a text with some bad news. You still get in the car and start driving, but now you are stewing about that message. And this affects your entire experience. Suddenly, every slow driver feels like a personal attack. Did that person just cut me off? Why is there never any parking available? And even the meeting with your friend may be affected because of your mood. When your nervous system is dysregulated, your perception narrows and your judgment is impaired. You react instead of respond. And this affects your everyday experience. A great tool to use is to pause and simply check in with yourself. What am I feeling right now? And why? What is this emotion trying to tell me? This way, you bring your awareness back online so that you, not the emotion, get to control the situation. Emotional processing is partly about learning to recognize which character is running the show and inviting the others to the table when needed. When you consciously pause, breathe, and regulate, you create a space for a more balanced response and a more balanced life experience. I hope this gives you some food for thought and a starting place to get curious about your own emotions. Emotions are not the enemy. They're just information. They're waves that rise, crest, and pass. And when you understand your nervous system, you learn to name and get curious about your feelings and give them space to move through you. You stop being at their mercy and you start working with them. And that is such an important part of creating and living a burnout-free life. Okay, my friends, if you want to take this work deeper, I would love to support you. And you can visit my website to explore ways that we can work together and join the Burnout-Free community, a place where ambitious women like you learn to create balance, energy, and fulfillment without running on fumes. And if you found this episode helpful, please like and subscribe. It helps this podcast rank higher in the search results, and as a result, reach and help more people. And if you know someone who could use a little more emotional clarity in their life, share this episode with them. It could be the reason they finally start to create more joy and freedom in their life. Remember, you are capable of navigating every emotional wave with compassion, clarity, and strength. It's only 90 seconds. I'll see you next time.